It was the year 2002 when a team of marine biologists ventured to the remote Maluku Islands in eastern Indonesia's South Pacific to study the intricate ecosystem of the Banda Sea coral reefs. This region, known for its unparalleled marine biodiversity, had long captured scientists' fascination worldwide, beckoning them to unravel its mysteries. The research team, led by the seasoned Dr. Amelia Sutherland, consisted of 5 members, each an expert in their respective fields. Joining Amelia were her longtime colleague, Dr. Lucas Moretti, a renowned ichthyologist, Dr. Nadia Khalil, a coral expert, Dr. Javier Mendoza, a marine invertebrate specialist, and Dr. Emily Davies, a promising young researcher fresh out of graduate school. As their vessel cut through the azure waters, the anticipation among the team members was palpable. The Banda Sea, a vast expanse dotted with countless islands and submerged seamounts, promised groundbreaking discoveries. Little did they know that this expedition would challenge their scientific prowess and push the boundaries of their survival instincts. The first few days were dedicated to conducting preliminary surveys and establishing baseline data. Nadia and Javier spent countless hours meticulously documenting the intricate coral formations. At the same time, Lucas and Emily focused on cataloging the diverse fish species that called the reef their home. It was on the 5th day of their expedition that an unsettling incident occurred. It was during a sample gathering that Amelia's worst fears were realized. As she bent down to retrieve a fragment of coral, a sudden and intense cramp tore through her abdomen, causing her to double over in pain. At that moment, she realized with a sinking dread that her menstrual cycle had begun, and the scent of her blood was now mingling with the salty brine that surrounded her. Unbeknownst to the researchers, a large colony of gray reef sharks had taken up residence in the area, their keen senses attuned to the slightest disturbance in their domain. The sharks, known for their territorial behavior, detected the faint traces of blood and interpreted it as an intrusion into their hunting grounds. Making matters worse, Emily quickly changed out of her blood-stained clothes. But this desperate act spread more of her menstrual blood scent into the surrounding waters, unintentionally luring the predators even more. As the team continued their work, oblivious to the impending danger, the sharks began to circle the area, their sleek bodies cutting through the water with effortless grace. However, their presence did not go unnoticed by the ever-vigilant Lucas, who couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that they were being watched. Dismissing his initial concerns as mere paranoia, Lucas pressed on with his observations. Still, the nagging sense of unease refused to dissipate. It wasn't until later that day, when Emily reported an eerie encounter with a massive shark while collecting samples, that the team realized the gravity of their situation. Her brow furrowed with concern. Amelia immediately called for a team meeting. As they gathered around the makeshift lab, she laid out the facts. They had inadvertently entered the territory of a highly territorial and potentially aggressive shark species, and their presence was being perceived as a threat. The discussion was heated, with opinions divided on the best course of action. Some advocated for an immediate evacuation, while others argued for staying put and continuing their research, albeit with heightened precautions. Ultimately, Amelia's level-headed leadership prevailed, and the team agreed to proceed cautiously, implementing stringent safety measures to minimize the risk of further encounters. However, little did they know that the sharks had already marked them as intruders, and their retribution would be swift and unforgiving. The following morning, as the team prepared to embark on their daily excursions, a chilling sight greeted them. A few meters from their camp, the mangled remains of a large fish floated on the surface, its flesh torn asunder by powerful jaws. It was a grim reminder of the apex predators that lurked beneath the waves and a harbinger of the dangers that awaited them. Undeterred, the researchers donned their gear and ventured into the water, their hearts pounding with excitement and trepidation. Lucas and Emily took the lead, carefully navigating the reef in search of new species to document. At the same time, Nadia and Javier trailed behind, their attention focused on the intricate coral formations. It was during one of these dives that the unthinkable occurred. As Emily carefully collected a sponge sample, a massive gray reef shark emerged from the depths, its mighty jaws agape and its cold black eyes fixed upon her. Before she could react, the shark lunged forward, its razor-sharp teeth mere inches from her face. Lucas sprang into action in a split second, positioning himself between Emily and the predator. With a sharp thrust of his spear, he managed to deflect the shark's attack, but the cost was grave. His left arm bore deep lacerations, the water around him turning crimson. Panic ensued as the team quickly realized that the sharks had perceived their presence as a threat, and they were now prime targets for their wrath. Nadia and Javier, their faces etched with terror, immediately signaled for an emergency ascent. At the same time, Amelia and Emily worked feverishly to staunch the blood flow from Lucas's wounds. As they breached the surface, the true extent of their predicament became all too clear. A veritable frenzy of sharks encircled their boat, their sleek bodies cutting through the water with predatory precision. The scent of Lucas's blood had drawn them in, and their aggression knew no bounds. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the team scrambled to haul Lucas onto the boat, his agonized cries echoing across the vast expanse of the sea. Amelia, her face etched with grim determination, barked orders to her colleagues, her years of training kicking into high gear. As they worked feverishly to tend to Lucas's wounds, the sharks continued their relentless assault, their powerful jaws snapping at the boat's hull, sending tremors through the very core of the vessel. It was a battle for survival, and the odds seemed increasingly stacked against them. In a desperate bid to deter the sharks, Javier and Emily hurled every piece of equipment they could find into the water, creating a cacophony of noise and disturbance. For a brief moment, the tactic worked as the sharks dispersed, their attention diverted by the commotion. Seizing the opportunity, Amelia and Nadia wasted no time in firing up the engine and plotting a course back to the safety of their base camp. But their respite was short-lived, as the sharks soon regrouped, their hunger for vengeance unquenched. The harrowing journey back to the island was a blur of adrenaline-fueled determination and heart-stopping close calls. The sharks pursued them relentlessly, their sleek forms cutting through the water with terrifying speed, their jaws snapping mere inches from the boat's hull. As they neared the island, the team's hopes of a haven were dashed when they spotted the ominous silhouettes of sharks patrolling the shallow waters. It was a gauntlet they would have to run, with no guarantee of survival. With Lucas's condition rapidly deteriorating, Amelia made the split-second decision to beach the boat. Consequences be damned. The impact was shaky, but it provided them a fleeting chance to reach the safety of the island's interior. In a desperate rush, the team hauled Lucas ashore, his limp forming a grim reminder of the stakes they faced. Nadia and Emily stayed by his side, tending to his wounds with their meager supplies. At the same time, Amelia, Javier, and the others scoured the area for anything that could be used as a weapon or deterrent against the sharks. As night fell, the true horror of their situation became apparent. Undeterred by the shallow waters, the sharks continued to patrol the shoreline, their dorsal fins cutting through the inky blackness like knives. The team huddled together, their backs pressed against the unforgiving rock face, their eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. They took turns keeping watch throughout the long, agonizing night, their hearts pounding with every splash or ripple that disturbed the eerie calm. The slightest sound could herald an attack, and their nerves were stretched to the breaking point. As the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, the team faced a grim reality. They were stranded on this remote island, with dwindling supplies and a relentless enemy that showed no signs of retreat. Lucas's condition, though stabilized, remained critical, and the prospect of evacuating him to safety seemed increasingly bleak. Amelia, her face etched with determination, gathered her team for a somber discussion. They had two choices: stay put and hope for rescue, or take the offensive and drive the sharks away from their island sanctuary. Both options carried immense risks, but confrontation could be as deadly as inaction. After weighing the pros and cons, the team unanimously decided to take the fight to the sharks. With their survival hanging in the balance, they would unleash every weapon in their arsenal, no matter how unconventional or desperate. Javier, a former military engineer, took the lead, drawing upon his expertise to construct a series of makeshift deterrents. Using salvaged materials from the boat and their equipment, he fashioned a series of noisemakers and light devices designed to disorient and repel the sharks. Meanwhile, Nadia and Emily scoured the island for any natural resources that could be used as weapons or repellents. They discovered a cache of sharp coral fragments and a plentiful supply of aromatic plant matter, which they carefully prepared into a toxic mixture. As the sun reached its zenith, the team put their plan into motion. Amelia and Javier took to the shallows, brandishing the noisemakers and light devices, creating a cacophony and light reverberating across the water. Simultaneously, Nadia and Emily launched their concoction into the surf, creating a putrid cloud that enveloped the shoreline. At first, the sharks seemed unfazed, their primal instincts driving them to continue their relentless patrol. But as the sensory assault intensified, their behavior began to shift. The constant noise and flashing lights disoriented them, causing them to veer off course and collide with one another. The toxic mixture added another layer of deterrence, assaulting their keen sense of smell and taste, rendering their hunting abilities virtually ineffective. The team had gained the upper hand for the first time since their arrival, and the sharks were retreating. Emboldened by their success, the team pressed on, maintaining their onslaught for hours. The sight of the retreating sharks fueled their determination, their sleek forms disappearing into the depths from whence they came. After what seemed like an eternity, their radio crackled to life, and the welcome sound of a rescue team filled the air. Relief washed over them like a tidal wave, as they realized their ordeal had finally ended. As they boarded the rescue vessel, their eyes lingered on the vast expanse of the Banda Sea, a bittersweet reminder of the beauty and betrayal beneath its placid surface. The scars of their physical and emotional encounter would remain etched into their psyches forever, a testament to the primal power of nature and the indomitable spirit of those who dare to venture into its domain. After their harrowing experience, the team's bond was forged anew, tempered by the fires of adversity they had faced together. Though cut short, their research yielded invaluable insights into the territorial behavior of gray reef sharks. In March 2001, college students, including John Andrews and Nicole White, chose Volusia County, Florida, as their spring break destination. Excited for a week of sun and sand, they looked forward to a break from university life. Unbeknownst to Michael Carter, he was also unwittingly selected as the target for their planned prank. The group chose a stretch of secluded beach away from the crowds. It was perfect for campfires at night and other daring adventures. The group was spirited as they set up camp beneath a starlit sky. The ocean was whispering only a few steps from their tents. On the third night, as the ocean breeze carried laughter from the group, Nicole, with a mischievous smile and twinkling eyes, suggested a harmless joke to make the evening memorable for Michael. Feeling adventurous, the group eagerly agreed. Always good-natured, Michael soon found himself at the center of a prank that would shift from fun to terror. Michael was absorbed in making s'mores, unaware of the whispered plots around him. They blindfolded him and pretended it was a joke before leading him to the water, where they gave him a little scare, pretending to push. They knew Michael would laugh off the joke, so they blindfolded him and led him to the water. Emily tied a bandana over Michael's eyes as they walked along the beach. She laughed as she assured him he would love what was coming. Guided by the hands of his friends, Michael laughed and joked, unaware that he was perilously close to the edge of the ocean. John pretended to stumble as he pushed Michael into the shallow waves. The group laughed, expecting Michael to join in. The situation quickly took a horrific turn. Michael's splashes grew frantic as he struggled to gain his footing, when a prominent shadowy figure appeared near Michael under the water's surface. The innocent laughter on the shore abruptly stopped. The commotion in the water and the shark's thrashing likely attracted the shark. As the reality of their danger dawned, panic replaced laughter. John was the first to react, his shouts of "shark" paralyzing the group with fear. However, the urgency of the situation quickly spurred them into action. Kevin, the first to recover, entered the water and urged Michael to remain calm. Simultaneously, Nicole, who recovered quickly, ran to their camp to grab a life buoy. Despite his fear, Kevin's voice remained steady as he reassured Michael, telling him to keep still while they worked to get him out. They threw the buoy towards Michael when Nicole returned with it. Kevin was the first to reach him and helped him hold on tightly to the buoy. They began to pull Michael back toward shore together, coordinated and desperate. The shark drew closer, its dorsal fin cutting through the water menacingly. Emily and John worked together on the shore, their combined strength slowly overcoming the ocean's pull. As they dragged Michael toward safety, everyone held their breath, a mixture of fear and hope hanging in the cool evening air. They finally pulled Michael away from the water's edge and onto the sand. His laughter was gone, and he began to breathe heavily, relieved. They collapsed in front of him. Their prank had turned into a potentially life-threatening situation. The weight of the possible loss hung heavy in the air as they tried to calm their racing hearts. Michael lay on the sand beach, trying to catch his breath as the realization of his near-death experience sank in. The group gathered around him, the bonfire crackling in the background starkly contrasted with the fear and coldness that had just enveloped them. Faces paled under the moonlight as the friends remained silent. Each was lost in their thoughts. Nicole kneeled beside Michael with her hand on his shoulders, her voice barely audible, overwhelmed with guilt. Michael, clearly shaken, slowly sat back up and nodded in understanding. They were all too aware of the shark's shadow, a reminder of how fragile their joy had been. Kevin, who had been instrumental in pulling Michael to safety, paced along the water's edge, scanning the waves seriously, emphasizing the need for caution. Emily wrapped her arms around herself and nodded in agreement, sticking to more straightforward, safer activities like light hiking, beach games, and sunbathing, avoiding further scares. The ever-organized man John grabbed his phone and checked local shark activity warnings. He read aloud from an article dated the previous weekend about sightings in the area. They should have checked before deciding to go for a night swim or play any water prank. They agreed. A new pact was born from the terror of that night. The friends decided to spend the rest of their holiday strengthening their friendships while respecting the environment and its dangers. The following days went by without incident. The group played volleyball, visited local attractions, and told stories around a bonfire, this time keeping a respectful distance away from the edge of the water. Michael's experience became a lesson to them all. It reminded them of the importance and necessity of safety. Kevin suggested a final gathering around the fire on their last evening while packing their things. His tone was joyful and sad as he proposed finishing the trip on a good note. The warmth of the fire battled against the cold ocean breeze. John proposed a toast, raising his bottle in a gesture of camaraderie. As the glasses clinked together, smiles spread among the friends, each feeling grateful for a bond that had not only endured trials, but had grown stronger. The following day, as they left the beach, the sun rose above the ocean and painted the skies in shades of orange and rose. They were not blind to the beauty of this scene. The scene starkly contrasted with the dark and fearful night they had just experienced. It served as a reminder to them of both nature's beauty and peril. On the way back to school, they discussed their next vacation, this time in the mountains, to escape the unpredictable ocean. The laughter was back, but with a new appreciation for nature's forces and the unintended effects of a simple joke. Michael hugged his friends as they said goodbye. He laughed, but his smile was genuine and wiser. They laughed and agreed wholeheartedly. Their ordeal was behind them, but not forgotten. On a cold evening in September 2004, the college swimming team gathered at the shores of Lake Baikal in Russia. This is the deepest lake on Earth and also one of the most mysterious. It was a night of initiation, a rite of passage for the new swim team members. The tradition of swimming across a dark, isolated lake area was to be continued. The lake's glassy surface reflected the dim light from the moon, and the surrounding quietness added to the eerie ambiance. The team of experienced swimmers and recruits prepared themselves on the lakeshore. The team donned their goggles and swim caps, with their skin tingling in anticipation and from the cold. Senior members told tales from past swims. Each added a layer to the event's lore, but omitted the latest danger lurking below the calm surface. Unknown to them, a group of bull sharks had been introduced into the lake, a species not native to this freshwater lake. The exotic pet dealers who illegally introduced these sharks into the lake had underestimated their adaptability and resilience. Sharks not only survived but thrived in the freshwater environment. The water was shockingly cold on their warm skin as the team started their swim. The team began swimming in a close group. Their safety headlamps cut through the darkness of the water and created an otherworldly glow. The calmness was misleading because predators had already become aware of the disturbance beneath the lake. The team members encouraged each other to swim with steady strokes and completed the first half without incident. As they approached the deeper part, their mood changed. A little behind the group, a recruit felt a sharp, sudden tug on her leg. She tried to scream in a panic, but the water muffled her cries. She struggled in the water, but the group behind did not notice her struggles. The team had spread so far out that confusion set in by the time the swimmer disappeared. The vast, dark water suddenly seemed threatening and full of unknown dangers. A swimmer who felt a brush on his foot instinctively kicked out, his heart racing as he realized something was wrong. The group was shocked to learn they weren't alone in the water. What had begun as a structured swimming session turned into a desperate struggle to survive. The team's cohesion began to break down as each swimmer responded differently. Some tried to swim faster while others froze. They could not see past the headlamp beams in the darkness. Each splash and wave signaled a new danger. The seriousness of the situation became apparent as more team members began to disappear, being pulled underwater without a trace. The initiation became a life-threatening struggle for survival, as the depths of Lake Baikal claimed them individually. The remaining swimmers tried desperately to regroup in the chaos that followed. Their minds were racing as they attempted to understand the danger they faced. Some swimmers located each other in darkness, with their headlamps bobbing like fragile beacons. They all decided to run straight for the nearest land, knowing they could only survive by escaping from the water. The lake's cold water soaked into their bones and slowed their movement. The swimmers swam in a mixture of urgency and fear, aware that an attack could come at any time. The lake had changed from a tranquil and beautiful place to a terrifying landscape. Each ripple of the water was a warning that danger lurked below. The dark waters behind them remained silent, with the only sounds coming from their frantic strokes and heavy breathing echoing through the night. They tried not to think about their teammates who were gone. Instead, they focused on the faint outline of the shoreline lined with trees. The swimmers' muscles were burning from the exertion, and their minds were filled with fear. But they kept going because of the will to live. After what seemed an eternity, one of the swimmers finally felt the bottom of the lake rise under them. After reaching the shallow water near the shore, they collapsed from exhaustion. Even as they lay there, gasping to breathe, their relief from the ordeal that they had just endured was tempered by horror and the knowledge that not everyone had survived. After the terrifying swim, survivors gathered around, shaking from shock and cold. The survivors were safe at the moment, but their trauma and the loss of friends were overwhelming. The magnitude of what had happened began to dawn as the sun rose, casting a pale light on the lake. At first light, the authorities were alerted, and a search and rescue operation was initiated. The search for the missing team members was conducted in the lake, but the task became difficult and dangerous due to the presence of sharks. The tragedy spread quickly, and the community surrounding Lake Baikal was shocked. In the weeks following, steps were taken to remove and capture the sharks. The incident ignited a conversation about wildlife conservation and the illegal pet industry, highlighting the dangers of introducing non-native species into unfamiliar ecosystems. The swimmers survived with physical scars, a deep respect for nature, and a painful reminder of how easily adventure can turn into disaster. They still carried the memory of that night on Lake Baikal, a reminder of how thin the line is between youthful adventure and mortal danger. The lake, now serene, still held in its depths the secrets of the night, a testament to the unpredictable nature of the world and unintended consequences caused by human interference. The night was cold and dense with fog in late autumn of 2003, off the rugged coasts of Western Australia. The Sea Whisper, a fishing vessel, navigated cautiously through thick fog. Her lights barely cut through the white blanket that covered the sea. Captain Peter Walsh and his 4-member crew were returning home from a successful but exhausting fishing trip. The mood aboard the Sea Whisper was subdued. After days at sea, the crew was tired, including Liam O'Connor as first mate, Sarah Jensen as engineer, James McAllister, and Thomas Reed. The crew was eager to reach their home port before dawn and enjoy the warmth of their families. The crew was jolted out of their trance as the boat hummed along the still waters. The ship had hit something huge in the water. It wasn't a floating log or debris. A series of frantic bangs were heard against the hull after the impact. Captain Walsh's command echoed through the fog as he ordered the crew to activate the lights and investigate their collision. Liam swiftly grabbed a spotlight from the deck and aimed it toward the port side. His hands remained steady despite the rush of adrenaline. The light revealed a terrifying sight, a giant scaled shark thrashing in the water, its tail delivering powerful swipes against the hull of the Sea Whisper. The crew reacted with horror at the sight as the propeller of their vessel sliced the shark's dorsal. The animal's confusion and pain were palpable. Its dark eyes rolled wildly in the water as it struggled. Sarah's voice was tense as she pleaded for them to get away, noting that the agitated creature could cause further damage to the boat. Thomas was told to change their course by Captain Walsh, who nodded. As they tried to steer clear of the injured shark, it became apparent that the shark would not let them go quickly. It followed, with its tail beating furiously in the water, fueled by pain and aggression. James felt a chill down his spine as he watched the shark's relentless pursuit. Half to himself and half to anyone listening, he muttered that it seemed like the shark had a score to settle. The fog thickened as the Sea Whisper, trying to outrun an injured shark, drove forward. Visibility was reduced to almost nothing. The only sounds that could be heard were the thrashing of the shark and the struggling engine of the boat. Captain Walsh instructed calmly but firmly to keep the boat steady. They could not stop there. They needed to head to more transparent water in an attempt to lose the pursuing creature. The Sea Whisper, however, was in poor condition. Sarah went below to check the engine, hoping it would last until they reached safe waters. The crew was still on deck and their eyes were straining to see through the fog. They were looking for any sign of the shark's next move. The tension was palpable as each wave crashed against the boat's hull. Each sound of water breaking on the hull served as a warning of the predator that lurked just out of sight. The crew was pinned between the merciless sea and the mariner's curse as the night went on. The situation aboard Sea Whisper became increasingly dangerous as the night went on. The fog thickened and enveloped the boat, dampening all hope for escape. Driven by instinct and pain, the shark continued to pursue the ship, with each attack more aggressive than the previous. Captain Walsh stood at the helm with his eyes fixed on instruments and a grim determination to navigate through the dense fog. The cold air was filled with rhythmic thuds as the shark's body crashed into the boat. Sarah looked worried when she returned from the engine. Although the engine held up for the moment, the strain from outrunning the shark had taken its toll. Fuel gauges were dropping faster than usual, a testament to their desperate flight through treacherous water. She informed the captain they could only keep up with this pace longer. They were burning fuel rapidly and the engine was overheating. Captain Walsh nodded with his jaw set. "We need a new strategy. We cannot outrun it, but we can outsmart him." Captain Walsh quickly gathered his crew and devised a dangerous strategy. The remaining flares on the boat would distract the sharks and give them enough time to escape to a nearby cove they had already passed. The shallow water of the cove made it unsuitable for sharks. Despite the tension, Liam and Thomas prepared flares with their hands still steady. On Captain Walsh's command, they fired the first flare in the night sky. The light arced across the water and landed a few meters away from the boat. Attracted by the sudden flash of light, the shark veered away from its course to follow the flare. Captain Walsh took advantage of this distraction and steered Sea Whisper towards the cove. The boat was lurching forward as the engine groaned under the strain. They were desperate to get to safety. The water slowed as they approached, and the bottom was visible through the fog clearing. When the shark realized its prey had escaped into less navigable water, it launched a final and furious attack on the boat. The Sea Whisper was shook violently from the bow to the stern. As the boat shuddered, everyone braced and grabbed onto anything they could. The massive shark scraped the boat's hull as its movements became more frantic. With great effort, Captain Walsh maneuvered his boat into the middle of the cove, where the water level was too low for the shark's attack to continue. The shark could not continue its attack and lingered on the cove's edge. It circled before turning around and disappearing into deeper waters. As tensions finally subsided, the Sea Whisper crew heaved a collective sigh. The crew of the Sea Whisper was safe for the moment, as they anchored themselves in the shallow cove. As dawn approached, the fog lifted and revealed the beautiful coastline. The crew enjoyed their surroundings as the sun rose, casting a golden glow on the water. They had been tested, and the ordeal strengthened their bonds. It also deepened their respect for sea creatures and the ocean. Captain Walsh turned to his crew and saw their faces, tired but grateful. He told them to secure the boat and then rest, acknowledging that they had earned it. The Sea Whisper crew and she remained in the cove as the sun rose, with the events of that night serving as a reminder of ocean unpredictability and the beauty and danger of their marine world. The community of Gansbaai in South Africa, a coastal town known for its rugged coastline and abundant marine life, was preparing for the 2004 tourist season. The 2004 tourist season was crucial to the city, which had been struggling with economic difficulties. Inviting tourists interested in shark cage diving and watching whales would boost the community's local economy. A renowned local shark hunter, famous for his bold exploits, ventured beyond his usual territory in search of a catch that would secure his place in maritime hunting lore. His target was a pregnant great white shark known to frequent the waters near Gansbaai. Although his hunt was successful, it triggered a series of unfortunate events. The shark he killed was paired with another great white, recognized by distinctive black markings on its dorsal fin and locally known as blackfin. Blackfin was so distraught by its loss that it altered its behavior. It had previously avoided the shallow waters around the beach. Now it is a regular visitor and moves almost deliberately aggressively. A local fisherman first noticed that his nets had been destroyed. This was far more than the usual damage caused by marine life. Blackfin became more and more dangerous as the weeks went by. The town was filled with a chilling air as swimmers reported close encounters. As the season approached, the beaches were eerily quiet. As the news of these encounters spread, tourists canceled their bookings out of fear for their safety. Businesses faced closure and the future of the town was in jeopardy. Initially skeptical, the local authorities needed to recognize the issue once marine biologists confirmed blackfin's unusual behavior. The shark had not been passing through but was now identifying where it had experienced conflict. The town council called an emergency meeting to discuss possible actions. They contacted experts in shark tracking and marine behavior to develop a plan to deter blackfin safely. Residents of the town were on high alert. A palpable sense of tension is marked every day. A collective breath was held until nightfall. The harbor, once crowded with tourists and boats, was mostly empty. The water around the harbor was unaffected except for blackfin's ominous circle. A group of conservationists in the area saw the opportunity to save the tourist season and change the town's fortunes by changing their approach to wildlife-based tourism. They suggested a shift in focus from shark hunting to conservation. They argued that protecting blackfin would attract a new visitor more interested in conservation and educational activities than thrill seekers. The town's first step in deciding on this new strategy was obvious. It needed to guarantee immediate safety while also developing a plan for the future that would benefit both the town and the marine residents. The challenge was daunting, but the stakes were too high to ignore. The solution needed to not only deal with the immediate threat of blackfin, but also pave a path for a sustainable and respectful relationship between the community and the natural world. The decisions they were about to make would determine the survival of Gansbaai, both economically and in terms of community. The town of Gansbaai acted quickly because of the urgency of the situation. They had to deal with sharks in their waters to move towards a more sustainable approach. This was done without harming the sharks or disrupting the marine environment. Marine biologists and shark experts were brought in to help with this crisis. They began by installing acoustic devices near the most popular areas. These devices are designed to emit sounds that sharks find unpleasant but are harmless. This encourages blackfin to leave the beach areas. The town also launched a campaign aimed both at locals and visitors. The campaign emphasized the importance of conservation of the marine environment and the role that sharks play in the ecosystem. The campaign explained new safety measures for people and sharks. The campaign began by changing the narrative of fear into one of respect and coexistence for wildlife. Blackfin sightings in near-shore waters decreased as these efforts gained traction. The shark appeared to be returning to its natural habitat, deeper waters. The community cautiously welcomed this shift, but knew the real test would be the peak of tourist season. Gansbai had everything ready for the arrival of the season. Drones were used to monitor the beaches for safety, and the acoustic repellents continued to work. Now, tour operators offer educational tours that focus on shark conservation. These include visits to research facilities and lectures from marine biologists. The tourists returned, much to everyone's relief. They were attracted by the promise of learning and seeing marine life responsibly. The town has been transformed. Businesses preparing for closure are flourishing, and many have shifted to support the eco-tourism model. Local economies began to recover due to the influx of visitors who wanted to support a community that valued sustainability over sensationalism. The conservationists and scientists kept an eye on blackfin as the season progressed. The biologists and conservationists tracked blackfin's behavior and migration patterns, collecting data to contribute to shark conservation efforts. The research helped Gansbai manage its marine life and position the town as an ethical leader in wildlife tourism. In the following months, the story about Gansbai's blackfin was told to a larger audience. Documentaries and articles showed how the town transformed a crisis into a catalyst for change by highlighting the importance of protecting and respecting the natural world. Gansbai became a model of how to balance human activity and wildlife conservation. The town organized a marine conservation festival in the final days of tourist season. The festival celebrated the success and efforts of the community to live in harmony. Blackfin was once a sign of loss and revenge, but now it symbolizes resilience and adaptability. The festival ended with the residents of Gansbai looking out at the waters that had threatened their existence but now offered a sustainable future. The balance they achieved was fragile and would require constant effort and vigilance. For now, however, they saved their town, enriched their relationship with the ocean, and ensured that both could flourish. Blackfin's legacy would not be a tale about revenge, but rather a story about redemption and hope for a better future. The Great Barrier Reef was bathed in a warm Australian sun, creating shimmering patterns that reflected off the white sands. Liam Baxter led a small group of snorkelers to explore a lesser-known section of the reef. The vibrant colors of the water were teeming with marine life. Liam guided the group expertly with his many years of experience. The snorkelers eagerly followed in their wetsuits and bright colors, admiring the coral structures, the vibrant life, and the busy activity around them. The divers were a mixture of nature lovers and thrill seekers, with cameras ready to capture this underwater spectacle. As they delved deeper into coral reefs, the water became more intense, and the coral formations complexed. Between the coral reefs, fish of all colors darted, and sea turtles glided gracefully. The world beneath the waves was a hidden paradise that held endless wonders, unbeknownst to the group. However, they drifted to a remote area of the coral reef, away from the usual snorkeling routes. Liam checked his GPS after noticing the changes in the current of the water and the types of coral. He was concerned when he realized they were too close to known bullshark territory. Bullsharks are standard on the Great Barrier Reef, but are known for their unpredictable behavior. A large shadow moved below the group as Liam considered their next step. A massive bull shark was visible in the water. Its muscular body easily cut through the water and its eyes revealed nothing about its intentions. The group's tranquility was shattered. Through snorkels, gasps were muffled, and fearful eyes widened. Liam beckoned everyone to remain calm and close. He knew that panicking would only provoke the shark. Liam's hand signals instructed the group to stay with him and slowly returned to the vessel. His calm demeanor soothed the group, yet tensions remained palpable. The shark circled them as they swam back. Each of the loops it made was meticulous and almost curious. Liam watched the shark closely, looking for any changes in its behavior that could indicate an impending threat. The group moved together with deliberate and controlled movements. It was a long way to the boat's safety, so every stroke felt risky. The shark's presence was a stark and unsettling reminder of how unpredictable the ocean can be. The line between admiration and fear blurred as the group navigated through the stunning yet menacing coral reef. The group was intruders in the territory of one of the ocean's most powerful predators. As the bull shark's shadow loomed below, the journey back to their boat was long and slow. The vastness and safety of the ship felt distant. The reef life continued to thrive as they swam. This was a stark contrast to the drama that unfolded at the surface. The group was tightly grouped, and their eyes were occasionally drawn downwards to the shadow below them. The giant, imposing bull shark continued to make slow, deliberate movements, reminding them of the danger of their situation. Liam led with calm urgency and navigated the water with accuracy. His experience on these waters was now their most significant asset. He checked over his shoulder to ensure no one was lost or behind. The dark shark shape was visible in the stark white sand, adding to the surreality of the situation. As they approached the boat, water began to swell slowly, with sunlight penetrating the depths, illuminating coral landscapes below. The beauty of coral reefs was almost mocking compared to their fear. Liam pointed up, signaling their approaching proximity to the boat. He urged everyone to speed up gently to avoid splashing, which could further provoke the follower. As if sensing the group's intent to escape, the shark tightened its circle, making its movements more purposeful. Each member of the group felt their tension rise with each shark pass. The sleek shape cut through the water with a grace that belied its strength. As the boat became visible, the group began to murmur in relief. Liam's look at the stern of the ship quickly stopped the murmur, reminding everyone they were unsafe. The group approached the stern where the latter was silently waiting in the water. Liam lifted the first snorkeler while his eyes were constantly scanning the surrounding water. One by one, the group climbed on board, feeling relieved as they stepped onto the deck and discarded their snorkel gear before collapsing into the benches. Liam was the last person to leave, and he kept an eye on everyone until he knew they were all aboard safely. He climbed out of the water only after he felt his body relax as his feet touched the deck. After being alerted, the boat's skipper started the engine. The sound was a soothing growl in the silence of the ocean. The group gathered around the boat's stern as it began to move. They watched the shadow of a bull shark disappear into the depths. It was no longer interested in the humans now that they were outside its territory. Each person was lost in their thoughts as they processed the experience. Liam briefed the group, his voice steady but his eyes reflecting the intensity of the last hour. He looked each person in the eye, emphasizing the respect that must always be shown to the ocean and all its inhabitants, acknowledging their fortune that day. The sounds of nature, such as the crashing of the waves, the calls of seabirds, and the roar of the ocean, became louder and more intense. As the group disembarked from the ship, their goodbyes were more heartfelt. Their experiences had brought them together profoundly and unexpectedly. The bull shark circle reminded them of the line separating adventure from danger in the vast ocean. A thrilling underwater adventure began in 2001 off the calm yet wild coast of Ningaloo Reef in Western Australia. 4 deep-sea diving experts, led by Dr. Emily Hansen of the Marine Biology Department, embarked on an expedition to explore a newly mapped shipwreck. Luca Moretti was an experienced wreck diver. Sarah Chen was a photographer specializing in underwater habitats, and Tom Bennett was a young marine engineer. The azure waters in the Indian Ocean hid secrets beneath the surface as the boat was anchored early one morning. The sun's rays penetrated the water and created a play of light, enticing the divers to dive deeper. They prepared their cameras and scuba equipment before diving into the ocean. Their hearts were filled with excitement as they hoped to discover the secrets of the sunken vessel. The playful light above gradually dimmed as they descended, and the water deepened to a darker blue. With each meter they sank, the sunlight became a mere memory. Finally, the silhouette of the wreck emerged, looming as a ghostly presence in the dim light. This large ship sank decades ago and has transformed into a vibrant artificial reef with diverse sea life. Divers were stunned by the sight. Coral formations had painted the ship in vivid colors. Schooling fish darted out of broken portholes while sea anemones held onto the deck with their tentacles gently waving in the current. The ocean could reuse and recycle what used to be on the surface. Emily was amazed at the ship's condition as they explored its perimeter. Each section of the boat tells a different tale about its life above water. Luca was busy pointing out the markings of the hull while Sarah was busy capturing each detail with her cameras. Tom, always curious, stepped away from the group to inspect a dense cluster of barnacles. Tom's dislodged part of the wreckage, and their exploration suddenly took a new turn. A cloud of sand and silt swirled around them, reducing their visibility to almost zero. The particles settled, and an ominous silhouette emerged from the murky water. The divers froze in place, stunned. Before them loomed a shark, its body scarred from battles long past, its gaze piercing. These marks endowed it with an aura of primal power. The great predator radiated displeasure at the human intrusion into its domain. The divers had to act quickly, temporarily forgetting their escape route to the surface. Emily instructed the divers to remain calm and to maintain a compact group. The shark circled them with its sleek, deliberate movements. Every turn the shark made in the dim light sent shivers up their spines. Emily remembered her knowledge about shark behavior. She knew great whites were curious but cautious creatures. She gently aimed her flashlight away from them toward the open ocean. It was intended to divert the shark by giving it something to look at away from them. Luca, meanwhile, found a possible hiding place. An overhanging part of the wreckage could provide them with a temporary shield. He pointed to the others, and they carefully moved towards the wreck, never taking their eyes off the great white. The shark seemed to grow more interested in the light as they nestled under the wreck. It slowly moved away from them into the sea's most profound darkness. As they watched the predator disappear, their hearts beat faster. The shark was still there, and they knew it. It was now up to them to find a way to get back to the boat without attracting the shark's attention. It would take all of their knowledge and wit to solve the problem. The ocean is not forgiving. They needed to act quickly. The team returned to the surface cautiously. The team navigated the labyrinth created by the corroded metal, overgrown sea life, and old ship. Each move was carefully calculated with a keen awareness of their surroundings. Sarah turned off her camera to avoid attracting unwanted attention. Tom ensured they had enough air to get them safely to the boat. Luca held his dive knife and watched for any sign of the shark's return. Emily was thinking about the behavior of the shark as she moved. The intelligence and curiosity of great white sharks are well known. The disturbance that they caused at first had likely drawn it. She hoped their more controlled and deliberate movements would make them seem less intrusive in this underwater realm. They reached a dense area of reef about halfway to their boat. This provided plenty of cover. Emily suggested that they ascend a few meters to reduce their risk of nitrogen narcosis. The group agreed to this, realizing the importance of both safety and strategy. As they climbed, their bodies adjusted slowly. The water became lighter as they rose, signaling that the sunlit waters were less dangerous. Even in the relative safety of the sunlit waters, they were still vigilant because they knew that a shark might be lurking nearby. They finally spotted the boat in the distance. It was a minor but comforting silhouette against the vast sea. They increased their speed slightly, eagerly rushing to safety. Tom saw a shadow in the peripheral of his vision. His heart skipped a few beats as he called out to the others. They watched as a prominent figure approached. The shark was there, its vast form quickly cutting through the water. Emily realized it was following their previous activities. She knew that they had to divert the shark one more time. She prepared to release the non-toxic dye cloud from a canister she brought for emergencies. A strong push through the water spread the dye, creating a dark, cloudy effect. The new stimuli enticed the shark and veered away from its original path. The divers seized the opportunity and made a final push to the boat. The divers reached the ship just as the dye faded and climbed aboard in relief. The adrenaline began to fade, and the reality of the experience slowly sank into their minds. The team survived by respecting the marine environment and using quick thinking. Emily kept a log of the events that day, recording every detail. This encounter taught Emily a valuable lesson about the fragile balance of marine ecosystems and nature's unpredictable behavior. The calm ocean magnified the profound depths they had ventured into. Amid this tranquility, the shark emerged as a stark reminder of the ocean's untamed nature. The divers looked on with admiration and fear, thankful for their safety, yet aware that each dive carried its uncertainty. They knew their subsequent descent into these mysterious waters could be just as unpredictable. The Great Barrier Reef glowed in the warm Australian sun under the clear blue sky of early summer. Amelia Bennett and her husband, Michael Bennett, chose this idyllic location as their last peaceful getaway before the arrival of their child. Amelia was drawn to the blue waters despite Michael's warnings not to swim too far into the coral reef. Sharks were known to be present. Her heart was racing as she donned her snorkeling equipment with a mixture of excitement and defiance. She slipped into the clear, calm waters and felt her body enveloped by gentle waves. The ocean surface sparkled with excitement. Amelia moved slowly and deliberately to avoid splashing. The underwater world was a vibrant mosaic of shapes and colors. The coral formations were dotted with schools of colorful fish. At the same time, the odd sea turtle glided past, oblivious to Amelia's presence. Amelia was overwhelmed by the beauty of the coral reef and felt a strong connection with the vibrant life surrounding her. She continued to explore, and the water around her became darker. This was a hint at the mysteries that lay below. Although she was aware of her risks and the sharks known to frequent these waters, the lure of the unknown kept moving forward. Her hands occasionally brushed against the coral, sending small waves into the water. A large shadow emerged from the depths without warning. The sleek, formidable shark moved with a grace belied by its reputation as a fearsome predator. The tiger shark was curious and unfazed by the presence of humans in its territory. Amelia's pulse skipped a few beats when she saw the creature approaching, its unblinking eyes fixed on her. The shark approached slowly, almost cautiously, as if assessing Amelia. Amelia remembered having read about electromagnetic fields produced by the body, particularly during pregnancy. Sharks could mistake these invisible but powerful signals for signals coming from their prey. Amelia was overcome with fear as the shark circled her. The thrill of being so close to the reality of her vulnerability had replaced the thrill of being so close to such a magnificent creature, and she knew she needed to act quickly. She swam towards the surface with all her strength. Her movements were deliberate, and she tried not to provoke the predator with sudden splashes. The reef, which had once seemed inviting, was now a maze of coral formations between her and safety. The shark began to move more deliberately as she rose. It closed the gap between them in a split second. Amelia saw its vast jaws and rows of sharp teeth. It was a stark reminder that survival is a daily battle. Amelia felt an intense pain in her leg when the shark's jaws grazed it. It was a warning, not a fatal bite, but enough to start a frenzy. Amelia, in pain and panic, struggled to keep her composure. Her mind was racing with the thoughts of her unborn baby, her husband, and the life that they planned. She pushed her way through the fear and resolute determination she felt to survive. The surface appeared miles away. As the sun reached the shallower water, it pierced the surface, creating patterns that danced on the ocean bottom. Perhaps satisfied with the results of its investigation, the shark turned away and disappeared into deep blue waters. Amelia arrived at the beach with her body shaking and the bite marks on her leg as a painful reminder of her ordeal. She collapsed on the sand, and her only thoughts were of the precious life that she held, as well as the realization of just how quickly the beauty of nature could be transformed into terror. Amelia Bennett, lying on the white, soft sand, clutched at her leg as she felt the salt water sting her injury. She was suffocating, with a mixture of relief and fear as she looked out over the ocean. The Great Barrier Reef's peaceful surface was a deceptive facade, concealing the dangers that lurked beneath. Michael ran to her side with a worried expression. From the shore, he had watched helplessly, and his heart sank with every ripple that suggested his wife was struggling. He was overwhelmed with gratitude and frustration when he saw his wife safe, even though she was injured. The marks on her leg were visible, but not as severe as he had feared. His voice, filled with relief and urgency, conveyed the necessity of immediately taking her to the hospital. Amelia was anxious as she replayed the incident in her head. Amelia's vulnerability was brought home by the shark's indifferent stare, sudden fear, and primal survival instinct. The doctors at the hospital confirmed that it was a superficial bite, which saved her life in what could have otherwise been a deadly encounter. Amelia lay on her hospital bed with her hand resting on her stomach. The gentle kicks of her unborn baby were a comforting reminder to both that they had survived. Amelia and Michael spent the next few days reflecting. The trauma of the attack on the shark had overshadowed the excitement of Amelia and Michael's baby moon. Amelia was struggling with guilt for swimming in shark-infested water. She was haunted by the warnings she had ignored, Each memory was a jab to her conscience. Michael's support was not enough to mask his distress. Michael wished never to see Amelia alone and vulnerable in the water again. Amelia and Michael revisited the Great Barrier Reef, but they brought their 3-year-old son Noah this time. The couple visited the same beaches with a newfound respect and understanding for the sea's inhabitants. Amelia watched Noah make sandcastles by the shore while his laughter blended with the sound of the waves. The reef was still as stunning and intimidating as it had always been. Amelia felt closure as the sun set, casting a golden radiance over the water. The ocean gave her a second opportunity with its mysteries and grandeur. She learned to appreciate its beauty at a distance and hoped Noah would pass on this lesson. The Bennett family gathered in the quiet of the evening to show the power of motherhood and nature's unyielding force. Tranquil azure waters of the Bahamas were irresistible under the bright afternoon sun, sparkling brilliantly in the Caribbean light. 6 months pregnant, Sarah Mitchell and her husband chose this idyllic destination for their baby moon, seeking a serene escape to unwind and savor a brief reprieve from their daily routines. The small island they were anchored at was hidden, a paradise with white sandy beaches, lush greenery, and a peaceful beauty. Sarah was eager to take a dip in the warm, clear water. Sarah stepped into the shallow waters in her swimsuit and with sunscreen on. The gentle waves that lapped against her skin soothed her swollen feet as she moved further away from the shore. The seabed began to darken as the water grew deeper around her. Sarah floated backward, enjoying the gentle dance of the sun's rays in the crystal-clear water. She was utterly at peace. Despite their seemingly tranquil appearance, the waters surrounding the island were not as untouched as they appeared. Although Sarah was unaware of this, locals knew that the area was a habitat for reef sharks. Generally, they are naturally cautious, but these sharks could become aggressive if provoked or during feeding. Sarah was swimming when a reef shark, attracted by the disturbance of the water, quietly started to close in from the deeper areas of the bay. Its muscular, sleek body sliced through the water efficiently, driven by its instinct to investigate potential threats or prey within its territory. From the moment Sarah noticed a shadow beneath her, she felt tense. While not fully alarming, it was enough to heighten her nerves. She flipped her body to float upright and scanned the surrounding water. To calm herself, she waded further, reassuring herself that it was just her imagination. The shark suddenly arose from the depths. It closed in on the distance with terrifying speed. The dorsal blade sliced through the water as if it were a knife. Sarah's heart pounded when she saw the shark form. Its eyes were cold and unyielding. She tried to escape in a panic, but it was already too late. The shark snapped its jaws around her leg as it charged. The pain was searing and immediate, a burning sensation that ripped her calm. Sarah struggled desperately in the chaos of splashing waters and thrashing arms. Her mind was filled with regret for her decision to swim into these unknown waters. She was battling to escape the predator when her thoughts turned to her unborn baby, intensifying her struggle for survival. She came here for peace and relaxation, not to confront the primal fear awakened in her by the shadow lurking at the bottom. Sarah's instinct for survival took over amid the chaos. She knew that she needed to act fast to protect her unborn baby and prevent further injury. She waded in the water with her hands, searching for anything to help defend herself. She found the snorkel she dropped and used all her strength to jab at the shark's sensitive eyes and gills. Taken aback by the shark's sudden retreat, it briefly loosened its grip. Sarah seized the opportunity, pulling her leg free despite the searing pain shooting up her limb. The water turned scarlet and blood splattered the surface. Ignoring the pain, she began swimming desperately back to shore, each stroke fueled by adrenaline and an unyielding will to survive. The shark circled back behind her as if to reassess the prey who had suddenly fought back. Sarah felt the pressure of the shark's gaze and the threat of another attack. The sight of the sandy shore, which was getting closer with every painful kick, pushed her forward. Her husband, watching her in horror on the deck of the cruise ship, dove into the water and helped her. Her weak leg throbbed as she struggled to get out of the water. Sarah gasped in shock and collapsed on the sand. Sarah lay on the beach safely, watching the swirling sky of blue and white above her. As the terror of the attack subsided, it was replaced by a feeling of relief that she had survived. She felt the steady pulse within her stomach and was reassured. She felt the regret of her decision, which was to swim in shark-infested water. The gravity of the situation became apparent as the sun set and cast long shadows on the beach. Sarah and her husband watched the waves rolling in as a gentle reminder of the ocean's constant presence. The scene's beauty was striking against the background of the day's events. It served as a reminder of nature's dual nature, tranquility and danger. Sarah's story was shared with the cruise crew and guests the following days. The attack highlighted the importance of listening to local warnings regarding wildlife and the environment. Sarah's encounter with the shark marked a turning point in her life, shaping the rest of the baby moon she spent and her understanding of the fragility of life. She often thought about the water and the shadows beneath the waves. But these thoughts no longer contained only fear. The reflections were filled with a deep, abiding respect for nature, born from confrontation and consequences. The ocean's fearful echoes gradually faded as she recovered physically and mentally. False Bay, South Africa, is known for its rich marine life, dramatic coastline, and vibrant marine life. The annual whale birthing began as False Bay was a hive of activity. The bay's water, tinged with red from the plankton blooms in the bay, provided a rare sight that attracted nature lovers worldwide. Claire Hamilton, who was 6 months pregnant and a marine scientist, was among them. Despite her advanced age, her passion for marine life drove her to join the tour. This decision was met with concern from her peers. The tour boat floated gently above the water as the morning dawned. The air was filled with the salty tang from the ocean and the distant calls of seabirds. The gentle giants of the sea, the whales, moved below with grace and ease that belied their immense size. Their bodies cast large shadows on the ocean floor. Claire, equipped with a fin and snorkel, stood on the deck scanning the horizon. The guide cautioned the group to remain on the boat due to the presence of sharks, who were drawn to the area by the seals during the birthing season. The seals, combined with the natural instincts triggered by the season, attracted great white sharks to this region, making the waters particularly dangerous. Claire could not resist the lure of being so close to whales in their habitat. She slipped into the water as the group watched from the boat. Her heart was pounding and she felt a bit of defiance. As she floated in the cool water, she looked down to the ocean's depths where whales sang ancient songs. The underwater world unfolded in a dance of shifting lights and shadows. Claire moved with deliberate care, trying to create minimal disruption. In the dim waters, she could make out the imposing silhouettes of the whales, their massive forms both majestic and intimidating. She was so captivated by their presence that she failed to notice the subtle changes in her surroundings. The sudden, eerie silence and the vanishing of the smaller fish, which had accompanied her like friends, went unnoticed. Her presence altered the delicate ecosystem without her knowing. The red waters of the bay masked another resident of the bay, a great white shark. Its senses were finely tuned, and it could detect the slightest change in its surroundings. As a lone hunter, the shark patrolled along the edge of the whale group. The possibility of an easy meal triggered its instincts. The great white shark is one of the ocean's most powerful predators. The precision of its movements had been honed over millions of years by evolution. It detected Claire's movements and the electrical impulses her body sent out, an unwitting message to a creature driven by instinct. Claire was mesmerized as she floated by the whale calf a few meters away. She failed to notice a dark shape approaching below. Hunger and opportunity drove the shark to see her as a possible prey. Its usual caution was overridden by its immediate desire for food. The shark rushed up in a rush. Claire felt an immense force collide with her body as a vast shadow enveloped her. She turned in time to see a great white snarling at her, its teeth stark white against a deep red water. The attack was brutal and swift. Claire felt a sharp pain when the teeth of the shark sank deep into her leg and dragged her down. Her body shook as the shock of the attack rushed through it. Her mind was racing from panic. She struggled as her instincts of a biologist were replaced by the primal desire to survive. She struggled to escape the shark's grip. Blood dotted the water. She was horrified by the clarity of her situation as she kicked against the enormous force. She ignored the warnings and was now fighting for her life. Her actions in the water contrasted with the peaceful observation she had imagined. Claire's struggle against the great white shark became more intense as the waters of False Bay turned a crimson swirl. She had learned about shark behavior from her training as a marine scientist, which she used to try and save her life. She remembered that sometimes hitting the shark's sensitive gills or nose could deter it. She swung at the shark with all her strength, searching for any weak spot that might force it to let her go. Claire's resistance surprised the shark, who momentarily let go of her. This gave Claire just enough time to escape. She pushed herself up towards the light while her leg was throbbing with pain from the bite. Fear and adrenaline drove the woman onward, even though it seemed like a long way to go. She heard a commotion and shouts as she gasped for air. The group was in a frantic state of mind after witnessing the attack. The guide steered the boat quickly towards her. Claire waved both arms to signal for help. Her mind was focused solely on her survival. She was determined to remain conscious and alive for her unborn baby. As the shark was circling back to attack again, the boat arrived. Strong hands pulled her onto the ship, away from imminent danger. She collapsed on the deck as the relief of escaping mingled with the pain from her injuries. As the boat raced back to the shore, the guide applied a tourniquet on her leg to slow the bleeding. Now was not the time to regret, but only to take action to treat her injuries. The reality of the situation set in once again. Claire survived the attack, but its psychological effects lingered. The physical scars took a few weeks to heal, but they were not the only ones. She struggled with guilt over her decision to go into the water against her doctor's advice, and terror from the attack haunted all of her dreams. Claire returned to academia a few months later and shifted her focus to training future marine biologists. She stressed the importance of ethical research and respecting wildlife. Her personal experiences enriched her lectures, which combined scientific knowledge and the lessons she learned from her encounter with a great white. Claire's experience in False Bay changed her life in a way she never imagined. She became more determined to protect the marine environment and all its inhabitants. She was reminded of the unpredictability and power of nature by her close encounter with a shark. Her experience was a crucial part of her work. It taught her a hard lesson about balancing curiosity and respect for the natural world. Claire's efforts to promote marine conservation were influenced by her encounter with one of the ocean's greatest predators. The remote island, nestled in the calm waters of the Maldives, seemed like a paradise. It was the perfect place for Emily and Tom to spend their baby moon. With its turquoise water and pristine beaches, the island was known for its wildlife. In particular, whale sharks were frequent visitors. Despite the ocean's known dangers, Emily, an expectant mother and wildlife enthusiast, couldn't pass up the chance to swim with the gentle giants. The couple walked to the dive site as the sun casts a golden glow over the water. It transformed the ocean into an expanse of shimmering water that extended to the horizon. Emily donned her snorkeling equipment, filled with excitement and nervous anticipation. She looked towards the water and imagined the magnificent creatures waiting for her beneath the surface. Emily adjusted her mask, and Tom gave her a nod of support. She plunged into the water. The coolness enveloped her. She was greeted by a colorful tapestry of corals and schools of colorful schooling fish. She floated and adjusted to weightlessness as the whale shark's shadow appeared in the water. Its massive form moved with effortless grace, belying its size. Emily was mesmerized by the sight of the whale shark. Its spotted skin passed close enough for her to see the tiny remoras that clung to its sides. She followed at a safe distance, her heart swelling with awe as she observed the peaceful interaction. The peaceful scene would only remain unbroken for a short time. Emily was unaware that her presence in the water attracted another, more dangerous ocean inhabitant. The rogue tiger shark, known for being unpredictable and aggressive, was attracted to the area by Emily's subtle chemical signals. In sharp contrast to the whale shark's calm demeanor, the tiger shark glided through the water with determined grace. Its streamlined body sliced through the currents as it neared Emily. The shark's dark, intent eyes surveyed the scene, honing in on the lone human among the ocean's giants. Emily was captivated by whale sharks and unaware of the danger lurking in the depths. She felt uneasy only when she noticed the water surrounding her suddenly becoming colder. This was a primal warning of danger. She turned slowly and saw the tiger shark, its striped body a warning in the clear waters. As the tiger shark circled, its movements were deliberate, embodying a predator focused intently on its prey. Emily understood the moment's urgency and sifted quickly through her memory, recalling all the advice she'd read about shark encounters. She held onto those crucial guidelines, knowing she needed to act swiftly. She slowly backed away, keeping her eyes fixed on the shark. Her body was tense with fear. Each move was calculated. The tiger shark seemed to consider the woman momentarily, moving its tail slowly while keeping its distance. The tiger shark was initially curious but moved forward quickly, changing its body language from curious to aggressive. Emily's return to the boat, fueled by adrenaline, was a blur. As she swam back to the ship, it seemed like the shore was far away. Her pregnancy had suddenly become a heavy burden. The water behind her churned when the tiger shark began its pursuit. It was a predator's playground that became a terrifying survival arena. Emily's frantic strokes cut the water as the Maldivian coastline loomed. It was still too far away to be comfortable. She focused on one thing: surviving. The thrashing behind her indicated that the shark was relentlessly pursuing her. Its swift movements were a blur at the corner of her eyes. Emily remembered a survival tip: make herself appear as intimidating and large as possible. She turned to face her pursuer, spreading her arms wide in an attempt to make herself seem more imposing. She vigorously slapped the water's surface, hoping the noise and movement would startle the tiger shark. For a moment, the shark seemed to hesitate, its dark eyes assessing her in the vast ocean. Emily needed those precious seconds. She resumed her swim with renewed urgency. Each stroke was a mix of fear and determination. She was drowned out by the sounds of water spouting around her. Tom, watching the horror unfold from the boat's deck, began to prepare to pull her on board as she approached the ship. His shouts alerted the crew, who rushed to help. The shark lunged at Emily's legs as she reached out her hand. Tom and his crew pulled Emily from the water with a mighty heave. Her legs were kicking just below the jaws of the shark. She collapsed on the deck after the shark's attack, her body shaking with fear and exhaustion. The crew pushed the boat quickly away from the area. The motor began to roar as they returned to safety on the main island. Emily took a deep breath, letting her breaths come in short, ragged gasps once they had a safe distance. The sun's warmth starkly contrasted with her fear of the water. Tom sat next to her. His presence was calming. The two of them didn't talk. Words weren't needed after such an encounter with nature. Each person was lost in their thoughts as they returned to the dock. Emily looked at the horizon. The peaceful colors of the sunset starkly contrasted with the deadly dance below the waves. She thought back on her decision to dive into the water. It was a choice that nearly cost her life. She reflected on her decision to enter the water, which nearly cost her everything. Emily's close-up encounter with the tiger shark was widely shared among island residents and tourists in the following days, as a reminder to be respectful and cautious when dealing with wildlife. Her story was told to highlight the natural environment's unpredictable nature and the importance of listening to local advice when interacting with wildlife. Emily took this lesson to heart. Emily's love of marine life did not change. Still, her respect for ocean predators grew, and she developed a newfound sense of caution. Her passion for conserving marine life remained unchanged, but she developed a newfound respect for the ocean's predators. Emily recovered from her shock and relived her escape. She knew this experience would forever alter her relationship with the ocean. A more profound respect shaped it because she understood that underneath its beautiful surface, the sea is a dynamic, sometimes dangerous world. It's an actual predator's play area. The Aurora Borealis, a research vessel in the icy waters of Svalbard, Norway, was a temporary residence for scientists studying polar bears' behavior and ecology. Laura Jensen was a marine scientist who was 7 months pregnant. Laura Jensen's dedication to her research was unwavering despite the risks of her condition and extreme conditions. Laura saw this as an opportunity to collect data to help conservation efforts. The Arctic landscape is both breathtaking and intimidating. The Aurora Borealis often shone in the sky, and icebergs shaped like alabaster floated on the water's surface. Laura spent many hours on deck in her insulated gear, documenting the movements and habits of the polar bears. Her research was crucial, as it aimed to understand how climate changes altered bears' behaviors. The Arctic is not without danger. Under the calm surface of the water, Greenland sharks lurked. These ancient and elusive creatures are known for their persistent but slow hunting techniques. The sharks were rarely visible but always there as part of the complex ecosystem that Laura was studying. When the peace suddenly broke, Laura collected samples at an ice flow's edge. The still waters were disturbed by a dark form moving beneath the surface. The Greenland shark was barely visible in the darkness of the deep ocean. Laura knew these sharks were usually scavengers, but that the lack of food in the Arctic could cause them to become more aggressive. She continued to work and more shadows appeared. As the sharks were attracted by her equipment's electromagnetic and vibration signals, they began to circle. Laura's heart raced when she realized the danger. Sharks are usually solitary animals, but this unusual behavior was likely due to hunger and an instinctive desire to find food. Realizing that she was in danger, Laura decided to retreat. She moved slowly to avoid provoking a shark chase. Each step she took back to the safety of her research vessel was calculated and tense. She was torn by her desire to learn and her maternal instinct to protect the unborn child. Laura glanced behind her as she approached the boat and saw the Greenland shark's fins slicing through the ice-cold water. Their movements were deliberate and unhurried. It dawned on her that she was vulnerable in this frozen wilderness. The Arctic was harsh and unforgiving, where life was at the mercy of nature. Her colleagues helped Laura aboard the ship. She reflected on her decision as she looked at the icy water. Fear of coming face to face with one of the Arctic's most formidable predators had tempered the thrill of being able to contribute to vital research. It was a harrowing experience that reminded her of the delicate balance needed to enter such a rugged yet pristine landscape. Sitting on the deck of Aurora Borealis, Laura Jensen watched the darkness where the Greenland sharks had vanished into the depths. Although the immediate threat had passed, her encounter with the sharks left a lasting impression on her. Laura's colleagues rushed around her to secure equipment and discuss the strange behavior of the sharks, but she was left alone with her thoughts. Although the Arctic's beauty is undeniable and its dangers are not, today's events have revealed their latent dangers. Laura was committed to her career, but her vulnerability in pregnancy began to weigh on her. She realized the delicate balance between following her passion and maintaining personal safety. It could be thrown off at the slightest provocation. Laura spent some time observing the icy landscape as the ship moved away from where the sharks were sighted. The vastness of the Arctic was both intimidating and awe-inspiring. She knew that the data collected on the expedition would be crucial to understanding Arctic wildlife. However, she still questioned if the risks to herself and her unborn baby were justified. Laura was determined not to let her experience dictate the rest of the trip, so she concentrated on collecting her observations and notes. From the relative safety and comfort of the ship, she continued her research using binoculars, cameras, and other tools. She was able to contribute in a meaningful way while staying safe from the dangers of the icy water. Laura was filled with relief and satisfaction as the expedition ended. Laura had overcome one of her biggest challenges with courage. Her encounter with the Greenland sharks was a turning point in her life. It served as a reminder to respect and be cautious when dealing with wild animals. Laura returned home and shared her experience with the scientific community. She stressed the unpredictable nature of Arctic research and the need for improved safety measures. Laura's story was a hit with many. It highlighted the inherent dangers of working in extreme environments and the need to balance human curiosity and environmental awareness. Eliza Martinez, a marine biologist and a native of Cocos Island in Costa Rica, set out on a research expedition during the sun-soaked months of the dry seasons. She was pregnant and full of excitement, but also a sense of responsibility. Her goal was to study the behavior and ecology of reef sharks. This combined her professional knowledge with a passion for marine life. Armed with research gear, Eliza spent her days aboard the Ocean Guardian, a research vessel with her small team of scientists. The calm, azure water hid the complexity of life under the waves. Eliza was confident despite her condition. Her years of experience and extensive preparation reassured her. Eliza was descending into the crystal-clear water when the sun's rays penetrated the ocean's surface, creating a shimmering quilt on the coral beneath. The coral reef was a hive of activity. Fish darted into and out of coral hiding places while sea turtles cruised along the currents in unhurried grace. The reef sharks swam among these tranquil scenes, their sleek shapes cutting through the water effortlessly. Eliza easily navigated the coral reef, buoyed by her sense of purpose. She was collecting data for her research, watching the interactions between sharks and their feeding behavior. Reef sharks are known to be relatively docile around humans. They seemed to accept her, occasionally gliding by her curiously. Unbeknownst of Eliza's presence, however, was a single bull shark. This species is known for its unpredictable and territorial nature. The bull shark, larger and more potent than reef sharks, moves purposefully and patrols deeper waters. Its dark eyes surveyed the coral reef, marking the territory with silent warnings not seen by the intruders above. Her work so absorbed Eliza that she failed to notice subtle changes in the underwater dynamics. Sensing the bull shark's presence, the reef sharks gradually dispersed and gave wide berths to the dominant predator. Eliza was absorbed in her underwater tablet and recording observations, so she did not notice the change. The bull shark began to close in on its swimmer, feeling its territory invaded. Its approach could have been more timely but calculated. A silent hunter, it was assessing the threat of the lone swimmer. Eliza looked up when she noticed a sudden drop in water temperature. She was frightened as she saw the silhouette approaching, much larger than any shark she had seen. Eliza was only given a few seconds to react as the bull shark approached, its intentions becoming clear. She tried to appear less dangerous by remaining calm and avoiding sudden movements that might trigger the shark's predatory instincts. The bull shark, however, was unfazed. It accelerated with a powerful tail flick, and its body was coiled up in muscular energy. With its mouth wide open and rows of razor-sharp teeth, the shark closed the gap quickly. Eliza was thrown through the water by the force of the attack as the teeth of the shark sank deep into her leg. Thoughts of her unborn baby consumed her, and the research mission became a distant memory in the face of survival. Eliza, fueled by maternal instinct and adrenaline, kicked her leg with desperation. Surprised by Eliza's resistance, the bull shark loosened his grip momentarily, giving Eliza just enough time to escape. As she struggled to the surface, clouds of blood and sand covered her vision. Each stroke was a mixture of pain and determination. The bull shark's interest in the fight had waned, and it was no longer interested. It disappeared into the depths. Eliza's co-workers, alerted to the commotion by the shark, rushed to help her on the boat. Her leg was bleeding, but her spirit was unbroken as she held on to the hope that both she and her baby would survive. Eliza Martinez and her colleagues on the Ocean Guardian sprung into action. Their training as marine scientists temporarily gave way to emergency medical responses. One colleague grabbed a first aid kit, while another called the Cocos Island Coast Guard Station for an emergency medical evacuation. Eliza was in a state of panic and pain as they bandaged her leg to stop the blood flow. She worried not only for herself, but also for her unborn baby. Despite the pain and shock, Eliza's scientific brain couldn't resist analyzing the situation. Eliza's current condition and the ocean's unpredictability were brought home by the bull shark attack. She regretted that she hadn't paid more attention to environmental cues, which could have alerted her to the dangers lurking around. The boat was racing towards the island when the sun started to descend, casting a golden glow over the water. This calm contrasted sharply against the urgency of the return. Eliza lay on the deck trying to remain calm. She focused on the rhythmic sound that the boat made as it cut through the waves. This sound is usually soothing, but was now the backdrop of her racing thoughts. Eliza was immediately transferred to a small hospital upon arrival. Doctors who were familiar with diving injuries acted quickly. After several hours of intense examination, the doctors assured Eliza that while her injury was severe, she was not in danger and that her pregnancy was safe. Eliza felt a deep sense of relief when she heard this news. For the first time after the attack, Eliza took a moment to be grateful for her safety and that of her unborn child. Eliza spent the days of her recovery reliving the events leading up to the attack. Eliza was a perceived threat or intruder by the bull shark, which her presence in its territory may have aggravated during the spawning season. This reflection inspired Eliza to use her experience as a teaching tool for others. Eliza returned to the field a few months after her recovery and the birth of a healthy daughter, Mara. Eliza's ordeal had only strengthened her resolve to continue her research. Her approach had changed dramatically. She invested in tracking equipment and stricter safety procedures to monitor shark movement and environmental changes. Eliza returned to Cocos Island with a determined but cautious determination to respect and understand the marine animals she studied. Her encounter with the bull shark did not dim her passion, but it had transformed it into one of respect and measured pursuit. Eliza's research has contributed to conservation and the study of shark behavior for many years. Her story was widely shared within the scientific community and even beyond. It served as a powerful warning to respect and be cautious when entering the habitats of these formidable creatures. Eliza watched her daughter Mara playing on the sandy beaches of Cocos Island. It was a place they visited often. She felt a strong connection with the ocean, its dangers and wonders as tangible as theirs. She believed that by showing respect, caution, and understanding to the ocean's magnificent predators, humans can coexist in harmony, protecting their futures and those of the creatures beneath the waves. Clara Bennett, a marine biologist, studied the behavior of great white sharks off the coast of California's Farallon Islands. The Farallon Islands, known for abundant marine life, have always been a hotspot where sharks congregate. However, there has been an alarming increase in aggressive behavior and encounters in recent months. While aboard a small research vessel, Dr. Bennett carefully recorded the increase in sharks and their aggressive interactions. The data was puzzling. Something was changing their behavior and pushing them to become more aggressive towards humans. On the islands, locals began to notice an alarming trend. Fishermen reported nets ripped apart and stories of sharks scaring them. Several locals went on late-night fishing trips and disappeared, leaving only questions. Fear grew among islanders. Dr. Bennett, driven by the need to understand these anomalies better and find solutions, teamed up with Jack Harper, an experienced fisherman with a vast knowledge of local waters. Together, they decided to track sharks' movements to discover any environmental changes that might influence their behavior. They found a previously unknown area of the ocean floor. They discovered an underwater crevasse using sonar mapping equipment. This may have been due to seismic activity in the area. The crevasse releases minerals and nutrients from deep seas into the water. This created an artificial upwelling that attracted several marine animals, including sharks. Sharks were exhibiting aggressive and territorial behavior due to the nutrient-rich water. Dr. Bennett, Jack, and the islanders realized this situation's danger to the local wildlife and the community. They devised a plan to seal off the crevasse to stop the flow of nutrients. They embarked on a risky operation with the help of local authorities and a group of environmental engineers. The goal was to place large concrete blocks and boulders at the opening of the crevasse. It was daunting, requiring precise timing and placement in waters filled with sharks. The team began operating from a modified barge equipped with heavy lifting gear and cranes. The initial attempts at positioning the boulders succeeded despite the sharks circling nearby. A mechanical failure in the barge crane delayed the placement of the final block. The delay was crucial. The team was in a dangerous situation as the sun set and cast a crimson tint over the water. Sharks began to close in, perhaps attracted by the activity or sensing disturbance to their feeding grounds. The barge was immobilized, and as night approached, Dr. Bennett, Jack, and their crew faced the terrifying reality of being trapped under the water and surrounded by sharks that were becoming increasingly aggressive. They hoped to fix the crane and seal the crevasse quickly before the situation worsened. As the shadows of the sharks became bolder, the sea whispered to them to keep going. The barge was rushing out of the darkness that enveloped the Farallon Islands. Clara Bennett, Jack Harper, and their crew scrambled to fix the mechanical failure. Great white sharks were active in the surrounding waters, and their silhouettes became more threatening with every passing minute. They worked furiously, knowing that each minute they lost would increase their risk. After what seemed like hours, the crane finally sputtered to life. They had no time to waste and resumed their operation to seal the crevasse. The final piece of concrete, designed to fit precisely over the opening in the crevasse, was carefully dropped towards the seabed. The team watched through underwater cameras as the boulder settled. The plume of nutrients slowly dissipated, and marine life activity slowed down. The intervention appeared to be working, but the situation must be monitored to confirm. As Dr. Bennett realized their plan had a chance of success, relief washed through them. Their celebration, however, was short-lived. Although less agitated than before, the sharks were still nearby and their patterns had been disrupted. The team had to retreat safely to evaluate the long-term impact of their actions. The ocean is unpredictable. As the crew prepared to depart, the vessel was gently rocked. Every crew member was on edge as they returned to the island. As they approached the harbor and its safety, the weight of their ordeal started to sink in. The fact that they had survived a deadly sea predator was a great accomplishment. In the following days, Dr. Bennett's team and their observatory on the island observed a gradual return of normal shark behavior. Sharks began to behave less aggressively, and the marine ecosystem started to recover. Fishermen reported fewer shark encounters, and the local community overcame their fear of water. The sealing of the crevasse is just the beginning. Dr. Bennett's findings highlighted the fragile balance of marine ecosystems and the unexpected effects of natural events such as seismic activity. Her work highlighted the importance of monitoring underwater geological changes in ocean conservation efforts. Jack Harper, a man who has lived all his life near the sea, developed a new appreciation for the efforts of the scientific community to protect and understand marine life. He used his experience to promote local conservation efforts. He educated others on the importance of preserving and respecting the natural world. The incident on the Farallon Islands was used as a case study in marine biology courses around the globe. The incident served as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of life, above and beneath the surface. The ability of the community to adapt to and respond to environmental issues was a testimony to human resilience. For Dr. Bennett, this experience strengthened her commitment to marine science. She continued to be fascinated by the Farallon Islands and their complex ecology and wild beauty. As the incident became known, Crimson Tide was an essential moment in her life that reaffirmed the importance of science to understanding and preserving our world. Michael Turner paddled gently through the calm, icy water as the sun sank behind the rugged mountains in a remote bay of Alaska. The tranquil environment, with its vast stretches of water, dense forests, and occasional cries of an eagle in the distance, offered the perfect escape to the bustle of city life. Michael, a keen outdoorsman, enjoyed these solo trips. He felt a connection to nature and peace that he couldn't find anywhere else. The bay was known for its wildlife and breathtaking views, but it was remarkably tranquil as dusk approached. Night slowly approached as the sky painted itself in shades of orange and lavender. Michael watched the seabirds dive for their food and observed the salmon leaping in the air. He was so engrossed in his surroundings that he forgot about the dangers lurking beneath the surface. This bay in the north was cold and deep. It is home to many marine species, including sharks. Shark encounters are rare, but salmon and other fish can attract curious predators to the shore. Michael was lost in his thoughts and shocked when his kayak suddenly shook. The impact was powerful enough to cause the kayak to tip dangerously one way. He was thrown into the freezing waters before he had time to react. Gasping with shock from the cold water, Michael struggled to find his way. His heart began to pound as he realized how serious his situation was. He was trapped in icy waters with his kayak flipped over beside him. Michael struggled against the cold and the panic that was building. Still, he managed to get up, holding on to the kayak's overturned hull. The dim light made it difficult to see what hit him. The dark figure was a shark. Its dorsal blade cut through the water's surface before disappearing. A wave of fear swept through Michael when he realized that there was a shark nearby. Michael was under time pressure to take action. The cold water was sapping Michael's strength, and nightfall only made his situation more dangerous. He reached out for the kayak with trembling hands and tried to correct it. He was clumsy and frightened, his movements splashing water in the process. Michael's thoughts raced while he worked. Michael knew remaining calm was essential. Any frantic movement could trigger a more aggressive reaction from the shark. Now his survival depended on the ability to think clearly and to paddle safely to shore before the shark turned his curiosity into a hunting expedition. Michael's fingers were numb from the cold, and he gripped the kayak as it flipped over. His breaths were short and ragged. Michael's energy was dwindling with each attempt to turn the kayak around. But he knew that he could not stop. The shark was a constant reminder to him of the danger he faced. Michael used his last bit of strength to push the kayak. It began to slowly turn around, with water pouring down its hull. He steadied his kayak with his hand, careful not to create any more splashes that might draw the shark to him. Michael stopped paddling the kayak once it was stable. He took a breather and tried to calm down his racing heart. He strained his eyes to look for the fin in the darkness. The silence was deafening, only broken by the lapping water and his heavy breathing. The shark appeared to have vanished momentarily, giving him an opportunity. He carefully positioned himself to climb into the kayak. He was careful to move slowly and deliberately, balancing caution and haste. He sat down in the kayak and let relief wash over his body. However, he was still aware of how dangerous it could be. Michael looked at the horizon to find the closest point of land. In the dimming light, the shore appeared far away, but he couldn't help himself. He grabbed his paddle, which was floating nearby, and started paddling as hard as possible. The fear and adrenaline that fueled each stroke kept his eyes darting about, looking for the shark. As he paddled, the sky darkened more, and stars began to illuminate the twilight. As the temperature dropped, his bones became even more chilled. Michael's training told him to keep a steady pace and conserve energy to avoid capsizing. The dark form of the shark suddenly reappeared and cut through the water parallel to his kayak. Michael's heart was pounding as he froze in mid-stroke. The shark was not charging, but its silent, close passes reminded Michael of its unpredictability and power. Michael knew that stopping was out of the question. He took a deep breath and resumed paddling. His strokes were even and controlled. His eyes were fixed on the dark waters. The shark circled, but slowly it lost interest. Its passes became less frequent and eventually stopped altogether. The faint outline of the coast was visible after what seemed like an eternity. Michael felt more relief with every stroke that brought his boat closer to the shore. The sight of land gave him new energy. His body and mind were exhausted from tension. He finally reached the shallows and pulled himself and his kayak to the beach. He collapsed onto the sand and lay down, gazing at the sky and breathing heavily. He knew the danger was over, but would never forget what happened that night. Michael was sure he'd kayak again, but not without a newfound respect for the dangers lurking beneath the surface, even in the calmest waters. He had overcome one of his greatest fears tonight. The experience shook him, but it also made him more appreciative of the unpredictable and wild nature of the ocean. In 2003, a lavish beach party unfolded on the white sands of a private island in the Maldives. This remote paradise, encircled by the crystal-clear waters of the Indian Ocean, offered an idyllic escape. A group of guests had chosen this secluded haven to enjoy the sun and sand, seeking a tranquil retreat far from the bustle of everyday life. Their presence on the island underscored its allure as a perfect hideaway. The party began in the late afternoon as the island glowed under the bright sun, reflecting off the turquoise water. The guests lounged on a white sandy beach while sipping exotic beverages and enjoying the luxurious atmosphere. The setting was beautiful, with palms swaying in the wind and gourmet food spread out under a canopy decorated by vibrant tropical flowers. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, several guests chose to cool off in the inviting ocean. Their laughter and splashes filled the air, masking the ominous shadow that moved stealthily beneath the surface. The initial hint of danger was subtle, a brief splash, a startled cry. Only moments before, the water had been serene and transparent. Panic quickly erupted, and the guests scrambled frantically out of the water, their faces etched with terror. A monster shark, far more prominent than the typical predators of these waters, had made itself known. The dark silhouette of the shark was visible below the surface as it circled the area where the guests were swimming. The massive shark glided frighteningly through the water, its movements deliberate. The guests began to realize they were stuck on an island, cut off by the mainland. Fear had shattered the festive mood of the guests, and they gathered on a beach. The guests watched helplessly as the shark patrolled the waters with its dorsal fin, slicing its surface like a warning sign. It would sometimes disappear into the depths, but reappear nearer the shore as if to taunt its stranded victims. The island became eerie as the night fell. Lanterns from the party uncertainly danced on the sand. Usually calm, the ocean now appeared as a vast, insurmountable barrier. The guests tried to form a plan as they huddled. The guests had to survive until rescue, but their options were limited because the shark controlled the water. As they surveyed their supplies, food and medical supplies, and any tools that might be used as weapons or deterrents, tension was palpable. Some guests started constructing crude spears out of broken branches and debris. In contrast, others searched the island for any items that might help signal for assistance. The shark was a constant danger, and its appearance on the shore reminded the guests of their vulnerability. The reality of the situation became more apparent as the first night went on. The likelihood of another attack increased with each passing hour. They knew they would need a better plan to survive until help arrived. The group needed to learn the shark's habits and how to keep it away. They needed to keep out of the water and have the cunning and the unity necessary to survive. They watched the water, knowing the next day would bring new challenges. Their fight for survival had just begun. The situation became more apparent as dawn broke on the island. The shark kept up its relentless patrol. Its presence was a constant danger to the stranded tourists. The guests were stranded with no hope of rescue, and their supplies ran out. They needed a viable plan. Guests observed the behavior of the shark throughout the morning. They noted its patterns, and when it came closer to the shore, it was attracted by splashes and movement in the water. With this information, they devised an elaborate plan to create a distraction that would allow them to signal for help while avoiding the shark's attention. They built a raft from leftover party decorations, guided by the technical know-how of an engineer among the guests. Their strategy was to affix an emergency flare to the raft as a distress signal. They planned to launch it from the island's far side, an area frequently visited by sharks, hoping the ocean currents would carry it far enough to be visible to passing planes or ships. This way, they could signal for help without agitating the waters near their own location. The raft was completed by midday. A small group of people waded into the water with calm excitement and careful movements to launch the raft. They watched as the raft floated away. The flare was ready to ignite when the raft reached a safe distance. The next few minutes were a test of patience and nerves. The guests kept a close eye on the shark and raft. They were ready to take action at the first sign that either failed. The flare was lit when the raft had reached what the guests hoped would be a safe distance. The bright red flare was a striking contrast to the blue sky of midday. All eyes were on the flare in hopes that it would attract the attention of rescuers. The shark, possibly curious at the sudden flash of light, moved towards deeper water and temporarily avoided the island. The guests took advantage of this opportunity to prepare their temporary shelter if help was still hours or days away. The flare was out of light as the evening turned into night. There was no immediate sign that help would be coming. The plan was not in vain. The flare was spotted by a passing cargo ship which contacted the local authorities. The guests were unaware that rescue was on the way. The night was filled with anxiety and long waiting. The two men took turns watching the shark as it circled the island. Its predatory nature was not deterred. As the sun rose the following day, a helicopter sounded to break the silence. As they waved furiously, the rescue team was attracted to them. The team worked quickly to evacuate all of the people from the island. Everyone saw the shark still patrolling in the water below as they boarded their helicopter. The ordeal was over, but those days of terror would live on in the minds of all who witnessed it. The guests told their story of survival when they returned to the mainland. They were bonded in unexpected ways by the experience, which reminded them of the strength of the human spirit. The experience left them with a greater respect for the ocean depths and the creatures that live there, as a reminder of the power of nature, even in paradise. The annual surf competition in South Africa was underway on a sunny, bright day in 2006. As surfers displayed their skills, the beach was lined up with spectators. Their cheers filled the air. Emily Harris, 20, is a rising surfing star known for her fearless spirit and bold maneuvers. The atmosphere was electric as each surfer pushed themselves to the limit to impress the judges. Emily was next. Her heart pounded with excitement and nervousness as she paddled into the lineup. She waited patiently for the perfect wave. The announcer's voice cracked over the loudspeaker with a tone of urgency. "Attention, spectators and surfers. Satellite images just revealed a massive rogue swell approaching from the southeast. Please prepare yourself for possible evacuation." The horizon darkened before anyone could react as the massive wave inched closer, increasing with each passing second. As surfers paddled frantically towards the shore, Emily was caught in the swiftly approaching wave. The rogue wave swept Emily and her board in a swirling water storm. The force of the waves disoriented her and she struggled to keep her bearings. Emily surfaced, gasping for breath when the wave receded. Her board was still attached to her ankle with the safety leash. Emily realized she was far from the competition zone as she wiped salt water from her eyes. She could not hear the cheers or announcements from the crowd. The coast was just a faint line in the distance. She floated alone in the vast ocean. Emily, trying to remain calm, scanned the area. She was horrified to discover that she had entered a shark feeding area. The water was darker and signs of a sudden drop on the ocean bottom were visible through the clear waters. She was horrified as she recalled the stories about great whites patrolling this area. She floated in the water, waiting for assistance to arrive. A dark shape caught her attention. Untethered, a large fin cut through the surface of the water. The great white shark was now in her midst, probably attracted by the commotion of the waves. Emily's training kicked into gear. She knew that sudden movements could trigger an attack. She used her hands to stabilize her position gently and measured her movements. Emily knew the chaos caused by the rogue waves would delay rescue, so she knew she needed to use her surfing skills and wits to survive. She placed her board to be as visible from the air as possible while watching the shark's movements. She prayed for help as each pass felt like an eternity. The situation was grave. Emily was alone, far from safety and surrounded by an infinite sea. Her life hung in the balance when she faced the ocean's most formidable predator. Emily's challenge was to survive the shark and maintain hope and courage despite overwhelming fear. Her mind was racing with solutions. She remembered that she had read that keeping eye contact with the shark can sometimes deter them since they are used to attacking unwitting prey. In this light, she kept her gaze on the shark and made herself as large as possible on her board. After the initial shock of being alone began to fade, her skills as a surfer became more apparent. Emily used her water current knowledge to subtly and slowly maneuver her board toward a nearby coral reef she had previously noticed. The reef could provide some shelter, making it more difficult for the sharks to approach. The sun started sinking towards the horizon, casting a golden glow on the water. The beauty of that moment contrasted with the terror she felt. Emily was a mixture of fear and awe, with her life hanging in the balance between both. She heard the distant hum from an engine. She squinted in the sun, trying to find the source. The rescue jet ski was part of the safety crew for the competition, and it was speeding toward her. Emily waved her hands frantically to get the driver's notice while still keeping an eye on that shark. The jet ski driver navigated the turbulent waters with ease. Emily saw the relief in the eyes of the rescuer as he approached, a reflection of her relief. He shouted above the engine's roar, assuring her they would get her out of the situation. Considering the shark's proximity, Emily carefully shifted weight to get on the jet ski. He helped her to the surface with a firm but reassuring grip. She had barely settled behind him when he began to accelerate away, his powerful engine cutting the waves on their return. Emily could feel the tension leaving her body as the shore approached. As they saw Emily safely return, the crowd gathered on the beach cheered. Her competitors ran to her and greeted her with relief and admiration. Emily's gratitude was overwhelmed when she finally reached solid ground. The sun was setting, and the colors of the sky were orange and purple. Emily turned back to the ocean. It was the most terrifying experience of her life. But it also reinforced her awe and respect for the sea, a powerful, unpredictable force. Emily's story quickly spread that night as the competition ended and participants celebrated. It was a testament to Emily's courage and her survival. She understood that the ocean was a constant in her life and the need to respect it. Her encounter with the white shark will forever serve as a reminder of how thin the line is between adventure and danger. Miami, Florida was hit by an unprecedented natural disaster in August 2000. Hurricane Eloise was a storm of unprecedented force that barreled relentlessly toward Miami. Residents stocked up on supplies and boarded their windows to prepare for impact. But nothing prepared them for the unique danger that came with the storm. As Eloise landed, powerful winds and torrential rainfall battered the coastal city. The streets quickly flooded and turned into rivers while neighborhoods were transformed into lakes. Storm surges pushed beyond the usual boundaries of the beach, bringing debris and seawater and several bull sharks displaced from their habitats. Bull sharks are usually found in shallow coastal waters near Miami. However, these bull sharks were swimming through streets that had been flooded and past submerged cars. Floodwaters turned the urban environment murky and expansive for these powerful predators. Sharks quickly adapted to their new surroundings, with their instincts taking over to hunt in the flooded urban waters. Residents of Miami were already struggling with the devastation caused by the hurricane. Now they faced an even more terrifying reality. They had to remain vigilant as they tried to escape to higher ground or sought refuge in the upper floors of the building. Each splash or shadow on the water's surface could be a threat. Hurricane Eloise continued to rage, and the floodwaters were high. The city was awash with bull sharks now living in the streets. This added an unreal and terrifying dimension to the disaster. Once known for its bustling life, the town became filled with quiet chaos. Nature had taken over the urban landscape. Things became dire in neighborhoods such as Little Havana and Coconut Grove, where floodwaters were the deepest. The situation was hazardous for elderly residents and families with small children who could not navigate the water safely. The people used anything they could find, including inflatable mattresses and floating debris, to move through the waters while keeping a close eye on the bottom. The city fell into an eerie silence as the night wore on, punctuated by the howling winds and the splashes of water caused by the movement made by the sharks. Most of the city was in darkness due to the lack of power. Only the flashes of lightning illuminated the streets. The emergency services were stretched beyond their capacity. Rescue teams on boats navigated submerged streets to try and reach people trapped in their homes or stranded on rooftops. Sharks were present in the water, making their task even more dangerous. The floodwaters hid the usual obstacles of urban life and the additional dangers of displaced predators. Residents of Miami faced a night filled with uncertainty as the first day of the storm ended. The intensity of Hurricane Eloise began to diminish as dawn broke on Miami. The floodwaters continued to linger, and the bull sharks kept on their unplanned journey through the streets of Miami. It was only when the sun came out that the extent of the destruction and the strange reality of marine predators patrolling the streets of what were once busy city thoroughfares became apparent. Tired from a night's vigilance, residents began better coordinating their actions. As the storm weakened, community leaders and volunteers set up makeshift command centers at elevated points within the city. They started directing people to safer areas using megaphones and any battery-powered devices they could find. They guided them along less flooded routes that sharks had scouted. Scientists from the local Marine Biological Institute studied this unique interaction between urban environments, aquatic life, and the environment. The scientists advised the rescue crews on predicting shark movements, influenced by currents created by slowly receding floodwaters. Understanding these patterns helped rescue teams avoid areas where sharks are most likely located. The temporary hunting grounds of the sharks began to shrink as the water receded. This funneled them into the deeper waters along Miami's main arteries. The consolidation of sharks in more predictable areas made it easier to evacuate and conduct rescue operations. Drones were used to monitor shark movements from above and provide real-time updates for the teams on the field. As they worked together, the community was put to the test. High water vehicles were brought in to provide essentials and transport people to temporary housing. Local radio and social media informed people about evacuation routes and shark sightings. After several days, the floodwaters began to recede sufficiently to allow for a large-scale evacuation. National Guard units arrived with more resources and a better understanding of the situation. The city faced a monumental task once the water receded enough to reveal the streets. The town was left with scars from the temporary presence of sharks. Buildings had been damaged, cars scattered, and marks were visible on the urban landscape. The relief of knowing that the immediate threat was over was palpable. The city then took steps to prepare itself for future anomalies. The town designed barriers that could be deployed quickly to stop marine life from entering areas populated during floods. The community was better prepared and informed by implementing educational programs on the dangers posed by wildlife in natural disasters. This experience brought to light the delicate balance between urban living and nature. The ordeal also highlighted the unpredictable nature of climate change and how it can bring marine life into direct contact with cities. Miami residents survived the hurricane and adapted to a unique challenge, navigating through a shark-infested flood. The experience was unforgettable, reminding everyone of nature's unpredictability and power. In 2002, experienced free divers Jack Thompson and Maya Collins were gearing up for a remarkable underwater adventure in the serene waters of Hanauma Bay. With their extensive preparation, they were poised to explore the vibrant marine life in one of the most beautiful snorkeling spots in the world. Jack and Maya decided to indulge in their diving passion at Hanauma Bay. The bay is known for its beautiful coral formations, as well as an abundance of marine wildlife. After securing their masks and fins, they checked their belt-mounted air tanks explicitly designed for free diving. The tanks were designed to provide just enough air for quick dives, but they had to be careful with their use. As they entered the crystal-clear waters, their world changed. The noise of the beach ceased to exist and was replaced by their rhythmic breathing and distant sounds from underwater creatures. Corals spread beneath them like an alien landscape, vibrant with color and alive with life. Jack took the lead, and his confidence in navigating such an environment was evident in his strokes. Maya was close behind, wide-eyed with amazement as she watched the colorful fish dart between the corals, while the sea turtles glided past. The dive was tranquil and mesmerizing. As they swam deeper, they followed a school's bright yellow tangs and unknowingly reached a less traveled reef area. The water became more relaxed and the corals sparser. An ominous feeling began to settle on them. Jack abruptly stopped as he rounded a corner in the maze of coral. Maya nearly bumped into him. They saw dozens of juvenile sharks in the coral bushes and rocky crevices. Their sleek bodies blended into the sand. It was a nursery for sharks. Jack and Maya exchanged worried looks. They were aware that they had stumbled upon a shark nursery. Mother sharks would have been nearby and in a territory that could have been seen as a threat to the young. A shadow hovered over them as they considered their next move. A large female, probably a mother shark, slowly circled, her movements deliberate and cautious. Jack and Maya were still aware that sudden movement could trigger an attack. They watched as the shark's eyes seemed to assess their every move. Jack pointed to a narrow coral passage, realizing they were in danger. This was their best opportunity to make a quiet retreat. The sharks were on guard and needed to find a way back without causing any more alarm. They began carefully escaping, taking slow, measured breaths to conserve their air supply. Each move was calculated to be as non-threatening as possible. The mother shark circled, her presence constantly reminding them that they were in danger. The urgency of the situation increased as they navigated through the coral corridors. Their air supply was limited, and due to their depth and the complexity of the coral surrounding them, they needed help to reach the surface. Each second spent underwater increased the risk. Their escape became more than a matter of stealth but also survival. They moved like shadows, barely stirring the water, focusing on finding safety. The reef's beauty, once mesmerizing, was now a labyrinth that held them in its silent depths. The shark mother's looming presence remained a constant danger as Jack and Maya navigated cautiously through the coral maze. The passageway was twisted, with its openings decorated with sea anemones. Its branches of coral were also sharp. The divers had to be careful not to harm themselves or the marine life. As their air supply was dwindling between them, tension grew. Every breath they took felt like a clock ticking down their remaining minutes. Maya looked at her gauge and saw that it was dangerously close. She then glanced over to Jack, who seemed to be worried. Jack, who was aware of the urgency, took the lead. His eyes scanned for a safe route that could offer a rapid ascent without further alarming the shark. He remembered an area of the reef they had explored earlier, which might provide a safer route to the surface. He firmly motioned to Maya, telling her to follow him towards a less dense part of the reef, where the water was more apparent and the ascent easier. Sensing their movements, the mother shark increased her vigilance. Her passes became closer and her circling tighter. The shadows cast by the sun overhead on the water alerted her to the presence of the two. Jack and Maya would freeze each time she came near, holding their breath and minimizing their movement until she passed. As they neared the edge of the coral reef, the open ocean beckoned. Jack spotted a column of clear water in the distance, noticeably less populated with marine life, offering an ideal path for a discreet ascent. He checked his remaining breath, barely enough for the effort. Exchanging a reassuring smile with Maya, they both understood the urgency. It was now or never for their ascent to the surface. They seized the opportunity when they saw that the shark was temporarily hidden behind a large coral outcropping. They began their ascent by pushing off from the coral as quietly as possible. Each meter of ascent felt like a struggle, and their lungs were aching for more air. A sudden movement caught the peripheral vision of both halfway up. As the mother shark became aware of their escape from her, she accelerated towards them. Jack's grip was firm as he reached out to Maya and calmed her down. They increased their speed, their bodies streamlined to the resistance of the water. The last few meters were the most terrifying. Above them, the surface shone like a promise of safety. They were desperate for air, and their bodies were urging them to break the surface. But they knew that it was not a good idea to surface too soon for fear of decompression illness. Relief was palpable as they finally broke the water's surface, gasping for breath. The masks were removed and their faces were bathed by sunlight. They looked around. After the ordeal, they could now see the shore. It was a comforting sight. The two slowly approached it, still being cautious. Jack and Maya collapsed on the sand once they reached the shore. Their bodies were exhausted, but their minds were racing with adrenaline. Their eyes were filled with relief, fear, and a newfound appreciation for nature's power. The dive began as an exploration into beauty, but ended in a desperate struggle for survival. They knew that they would dive again, but only with a greater appreciation of the ecosystems and inhabitants of the ocean. They were not only escaping the shark, but also from their complacency when faced with nature's silent and imposing depths. It was the summer of 2011, and the sun-drenched shores of the Caribbean beckoned like a siren's call to travelers seeking an escape from the stresses of everyday life. Among those drawn to its pristine beaches and crystal-clear waters was Sophia Collins, a vibrant young woman from New York City, who had embarked on a solo adventure to celebrate her recent college graduation. As she settled into her beachfront villa on the idyllic island of St. Lucia, Sophia couldn't help but feel a sense of unbridled joy wash over her. The gentle lapping of the waves against the shore was like a soothing melody, lulling her into a state of blissful relaxation that she had seldom experienced in the hustle and bustle of the city. On her third day in paradise, Sophia was drawn to the allure of the turquoise waters, the sun's rays glistening off the surface like 1,000 diamonds. Without a second thought, she slipped into her bikini, grabbed a towel, and went down to the beach, her mind already lost in the promise of a refreshing swim. Little did Sophia know, however, that her innocent desire for a dip in the ocean was about to unleash a primal force that had lurked in these waters for millions of years. A force that would test the very limits of her will to survive. Sophia couldn't help but marvel at the beauty surrounding her as she waded into the gentle waves. Schools of vibrantly colored fish darted through the clear water, their scales shimmering like tiny rainbows in the sunlight. The soft sand beneath her feet felt like a natural massage, and the warmth of the water was like a soothing embrace. Then, Sophia noticed the first telltale sign that something was amiss. A faint yet unmistakable plume of red began to emanate from her, dispersing slowly into the water around her. At that moment, she realized with a sudden jolt of panic that her period had started, and the scent of her blood was now mingling with the salty brine. Before she could even comprehend the gravity of the situation, a dark shadow emerged from the depths, its presence announced by a subtle ripple on the surface. Sophia's heart began to race as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing, her mind refusing to accept the harsh reality unfolding before her eyes. In a single heart-stopping moment, the shadow revealed itself, a massive bull shark. its cold, soulless eyes fixed upon her with an unwavering hunger. Sophia froze, her body paralyzed by a primal fear gripping her soul as the predator began to circle, its powerful tail cutting through the water like a scythe. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as the shark closed in, its rows of razor-sharp teeth glistening in the midday sun. Sophia knew that any sudden movements could trigger the creature's hunting instincts, so she trod water with cautious precision, her mind racing to find a way to escape the jaws of the apex predator. But just as she thought she might have a chance at survival, the shark struck with lightning speed, its massive jaws clamping down on her left leg with a force that threatened to tear the limb from her body. Sophia let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed across the once tranquil beach, her voice piercing the air like a banshee's wail. The pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced, a searing agony that radiated through her entire being. She thrashed and fought against the shark's grip, her hands clawing at the water, desperately trying to break free. But the predator was relentless, its mighty jaws refusing to relinquish their hold on its prey. As the seconds ticked by, Sophia's strength began to wane, her vision blurring from the sheer shock and blood loss. She knew that if she didn't act quickly, she would soon succumb to the shark's savage assault. With a primal determination that she never knew she possessed, Sophia grabbed a fistful of sand from the ocean floor, hurling it with all her might into the shark's cold, dead eyes. The creature recoiled, momentarily stunned by the unexpected attack. Sophia managed to break free from its jaws in that split second of reprieve. But her ordeal was far from over. The shark, now enraged, circled her once more, its predatory instincts fully awakened. Sophia knew that she had to find a way to reach the safety of the shore, or she would surely perish in the jaws of the apex predator. With a burst of adrenaline-fueled determination, she began to swim towards the beach, her movements hindered by the searing pain in her mangled leg. Each stroke felt like a battle against the riptide of death that threatened to pull her under. But her indomitable will to survive kept her afloat. Sensing its prey's desperation, the shark redoubled its efforts, repeatedly striking with lightning speed. Sophia could feel the creature's powerful jaws grazing her flesh, its teeth tearing at her skin like 1,000 razor blades. But still she pressed on, her mind focused on a single goal, reaching the safety of the shore. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she dragged herself onto the sandy beach, her body battered and her spirit pushed to the brink. As she collapsed onto the warm sand, she could hear the faint sound of sirens in the distance, signaling that help was coming. In the aftermath of her harrowing ordeal, Sophia found herself forever changed, her innocence shattered by the raw brutality of nature's most primal forces. The scars that adorned her body were a constant reminder of the price she had paid for her survival. Still, they were also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the indomitable will to live. As she lay in the hospital bed, surrounded by the beeping of machines and the concerned faces of her loved ones, Sophia couldn't help but reflect on the events that had unfolded in those blood-soaked waters. She had stared into the abyss of death and emerged victorious, her will to survive acting as a beacon guiding her through the darkest moments. Sophia carried a newfound respect for the majesty and the ocean's fury from that day forward. This force had humbled her, yet ultimately failed to break her indomitable spirit.